This video is brought to you by Juice Energy. If you're looking for a great gaming supplement, use my code on screen to receive 10% off. So, I made a few mistakes. A few months ago, I made this, where I analysed the weapons of Destiny 2 if they were put into real life standards. However, I missed a lot, and I mean a lot. I covered the real simple basics of the weapons such as the calibers of the weapons and even compared them into real life standards. However, I got a few things wrong and I missed a fair bit of information, and I mean a fair bit of information. So in this video, I will be going through all the missing details as well as all the new weapons added from the Witch Queen all the way to Season of the Seraph. If you haven't done so now, click on the annotation on screen to go watch the first video, otherwise we have a lot to talk about. I made the comment that auto rifles take their similarity to modern day rifles such as the Shadow Price or the Kvostov 7G looking like an M4, and that other ones such as the Valkyrie or the Chroma Rush taking their reference to a P90 in the form of an assault rifle. What I did mention was that the Sweet Business used a double action system similar to a revolver, when I completely forgot to mention that the magazine used is in the shape of a helical drum. And to save a segment, the Huckleberry also uses this magazine type. Helical magazines are drum-based magazines that follow a spiral path to the firing chamber. Helical magazines are extremely uncommon in most firearms today, purely to some firing mechanisms and the simplicity of straight or drum-based magazines. However, the most common firearm to use this form of magazines are actually the Calico M960 or the PP19 Bison. The design of these magazines were primarily used to allow more ammo in the magazine in such a relatively compact size. The Sweet Business in this case uses one of these magazines, and due to the reload animation, it seems Cirrus made it very clear to allow a noticeable groove to allow the bullets to be fed properly, as the case why it shoots with a rotating barrel would be primarily because of the cooling method to prevent loss of accuracy and overheating. But we aren't done yet, because I missed two auto rifles as well, the Tommy's Matchbook and Cerberus Plus One. Tommy's Matchbook, for those who are familiar with pop culture, will know that the weapon strikes a resemblance to the Thompson submachine gun, and you'd be spot on, as everything is identical to how the drum mag operates, from sliding the magazine to the side opposed to reloading it like a normal magazine, to even the charge handle to cycle a new cartridge. Then we look at Cerberus Plus One, probably one of the most trickiest auto rifle because of what this gun actually is. Upon inspection of the weapon, the gun comes with 3 extra barrel perks right off the bat, which now makes this gun near impossible to actually decipher on how it works. But hey, if I got fusion rifles to work, I can get this to work. Upon inspection of how this weapon will actually fire points out that the feeding of a bullet were to operate. If there's a barrel, there's a way for a bullet or a shell to be fed through a magazine or a tube. It's possible that the only way this weapon can work is with a very complicated, custom-made bullet that allows 3 caseless bullets to be separated, then fed through, sort of like cutting a cake or splitting a hollow point round. For those who are unaware what a caseless round actually does, they ignite as a propellant, shooting out the whole projectile rather than the traditional round striking a primer, then igniting the gunpowder. The only plausible explanation of how this custom circular casing on the bullet would work is if it was molded very softly with 3 caseless rounds around the actual shape of the brass of the bullet. Then once it's fed through, it would be cut into shape. Remember, as long as the primer, gunpowder and projectile are present in a bullet or in a chamber, the weapon can fire, meaning the bullet main casing would be an odd shape. The possible design flaw of the caseless round attempting to fit around the main bullet is a possible reason why the bullet shoots in an erratic pattern, as well as with the exotic catalyst allowing a tighter spread and lowering the fire rate would have to be consisting the reduced amount of kinetic heat being pushed out. The only reason we went with caseless on the other barrels is more in the fact Cerberus does not eject 3 more casings, but actually the main casing from the center barrel does. Too long didn't watch, Cerberus has 4 bullets made into 1 whole bullet.
We're back visiting scouts, and in the previous video there was a scout rifle that was missed, and it goes beyond the general form of DMR operation, and that was the Dead Man's Tail as well as the Long Arm. Both of these weapons are lever actions that operate identical to any form of lever action, such as the Browning 1886 or the 410 bore Henry shotgun. These lever actions load with the side gate similar to most feeding tubes, then are cycled through the lever once the cartridge has been used. In terms of the design of the DMT, the whole assembly of the weapon itself goes between the modern and the traditional style of lever actions, allowing both the option of vicinity rail options such as red dots or having an adjustable iron sight. But the one thing in the DMT's design is that instead of having a traditional lever action grip, it actually uses a modified stock on sight with the cheek guard, and most importantly, that the weapon also has pistol grip. These do exist in the Browning lever actions. As far as what caliber these weapons would use, Xeno had to go off what was provided in the last video and how this is the one scout rifle type that uses impact values. That being said, as well as compatibility, it would be both appropriate for the DMT and long arm to use 45-70 caliber rounds, which is common in a lot of center fire lever actions. As far as the reload animation goes, this is the method known as the dual loading, which is a common speed load tactic used in competitive shooting or even police operations, where you hold 2 shells and bullets and load them into the side feeder. Other scout rifles that weren't covered, such as Skyburner's Oath, Song of Justice, or the Doom of Chelchis, operate in their functionality of most semi-auto rifles, similar to the M14 EBR. Another theory that's going around is the Conspirator, which a lot of people still are confused of how it works. With a lot of theory work, it's possible that the design of the Conspirator works with an extended catch similar to the FN2000. Now this took some theory work and referencing off the real weapon, but the FN2000 uses a tube to eject its bullets and feed through empty shells at the same time. If we were to expand this mechanism and add another bullet catcher, it is possible to allow a bullet from the magazine to be added into the chamber. The less you think about it, the better.
Let's talk about glaives and bows, because while glaives came out in Witch Queen, bows have been around for a while since Forsaken. Glaives act as a close combat, quick melee weapon with shielding capabilities. Sadly, there's not a lot of data if a projectile version of a glaive exists. But if something like this were to happen, a matter of an attached weapon chassis with an extended firing trigger would exist, or just simply put it as a bayonet attachment on a weapon. But yeah, I'm not going to get into that because, you know, space magic. Bows, however, are pretty self-explanatory. Most modern bows today use a mixture of aluminum, carbon, titanium, graphite, and fiberglass. These differences on the bows compared to the real-world counterparts are just about as what you'd expect. Lightweight bows such as Whispering Slab or Lunalata 4B use a recurve design, and precision bows like Point of the Stag or Strident Whistle use a compound design, both being accurate to real-life standards of accuracy, and there's no real information to tell us if the heads are any different in damage. From what is given in terms of damage, lightweights and precisions would use a set poundage scale to allow the amount of kinetic force to be delivered. As far as the draw time goes, this depends on the user itself, as well as the tuning of the bow itself and the type of string. Then we have Leviathan's Breath, which upon inspection itself is also a compound bow, with a heavy custom broadhead arrow. However, it's using a chain instead of a bowstring. The Leviathan's Breath uses hydraulics mounting on the limbs to deliver the impact. As far as why it uses chains, we can only guess this is to reduce the physical strain if it was a bowstring, plus pulling on a string would snap.
We wanted to think handcannons were pretty simple in their design, but there were a few things that were missed. In the previous video, I mentioned a critical error when mentioning that the Sturm looked similar to the Tech 9 in terms of how it operates. However, it goes off the Morza 712, which is a hammer action system like the Sturm. There was one key difference that the Sturm doesn't have, and that was the slide for loading a new cartridge. Since the Sturm doesn't have a slide and actually resets the hammer once this weapon has been reloaded. Another one has to do with all other handcannons in the game, and this came as a really interesting post from Reddit. The user was asking, how does the Ace of Spades work if the barrel was on the bottom of the gun? Well, this didn't take long to figure out from both myself and the Reddit community, and it came as a small discovery that some of these handcannons actually go as the form of design as the Matebo Auto Revolver or the Unica 6, but more with a modified hammer to help the cylinder chamber cycle through the next casing. Now that should be all it, but the Crimson is getting the same treatment on the theories as the Cerberus Plus One. The Crimson handcannon's exotic perk, Banned Weapon, allows the handcannon to fire 3 bullets at a time, which got me thinking, how does this weapon physically work? Based on all the knowledge we have gathered from the previous video and general firearm knowledge, the weapon works as a double action system with burst fire. which no revolver in the world exists. However, burst pistols do. Burst fire operates as an alternate select fire on most rifles, as it operates on a full trigger pull like most weapons, and it must be held to complete the full burst cycle. Once the mode has been selected, the ratchet of the weapon is latched on, which opposed to the full Odyssey being reset after each trigger pull to allow full auto. This ratchet has an amount of notches which acts similar to how a firearm resets after each casing is ejected. However, there's a catch. It can only go so far before needing a manual reset. With this, it's not possible that the hammer would actually reset from the ejection force opposed to the mechanism being reset after each trigger pull, similar to how most firearms cycle their casings on semi-auto. Once the bullets are fired, this trigger needs to be released to allow the ratchet to be reset into position, allowing another 3 strikes. And per usual, the double action hammer system will come into place, cycling the revolver cylinder for the chamber. Now we've got an idea on how the Crimson operates, the next question is what ammunition does it use, because the Crimson has 27 rounds before it needs to be reloaded. And after many theories, we have concluded that it uses a propellant-based ammunition. This was a difficult one, so I'll explain. Opposed to the common bullet using gunpowder to ignite and disperse the projectile, propellant-based bullets use a smokeless or nitroglucose powder. These prevent accidental detonation from a bullet behind the detonated cartridge. So how does this all work for the Crimson? And for that we actually need to look at the Metal Storm electronic system. This system operates similarly like a printer. Once the bullets or casing is stored, the system sends a signal electronically to fire the bullet, allowing the burst to be cycled through. In this case, slamming the hammer 3 times to send a manual electronic signal to each tube. So we've figured out how the Crimson actually works. We've identified it as an electronic double action burst system, allowing 3 shots to be shot with an electronic switch, reset with a ratchet, and continue to be fired until those 3 shots have been expanded, rotating the revolver cylinder for the next load of cartridges ready to fire. So what caliber does it fire? Well, since the weapon deals identical damage to the rapid fire Suros, I was going to say with the reduced powder count that it could be a 380 ACP. However, with the damage fall off on this weapon being identical to handcannons, I've given the theory of a 9mm match propellant based bullet, allowing both the precision compared to the standard 9mm. And now there's one more weapon I need to talk about, because it's not a hand cannon, but it's the Forerunner sidearm. When Bungie's 30th anniversary came out with Dares of Eternity, they released a lot of weapons referencing their past games. According to the Halo wiki and keeping it traditional, the M60 is a recoil-operated magazine-fed handgun chambered with 12.7 by 40mm semi-armor-piercing high-explosive rounds. But it has also been known to load 450 Magnum. And since these deal the exact amount of damage as an adaptive hand cannon, the information was pretty much all there right on the wiki. So that should be it for hand cannons, until Bungie decide to release something in Lightfall.
From the introduction to Season of the Haunted, one new fusion rifle type has been added into the game. The first aggressive fusion rifle, which allows 3-shot bursts. Per to the previous video, Xeno had discussed that the perks themselves gives us an idea of what they all use to operate and get the weapon to fire, such as a battery to generate power and operate as a magazine, coils which generate the power from the battery to increase or generate its power, a fuse to allow the stored energy to be distributed upon its fire, and a repeater to release the bolts when the weapon is fired. We also mentioned that linears have a high capacity fuse to allow a high powered shot. Fusion rifles would contain multiple low capacity fuses, then disperse with the repeater, and trace rifles use a continuous circuit. Now as far as Storm Chaser goes, it should be pretty simple to say it uses a mixture of medium capacity fuses and allowed the repeater to fire 3 bolts in a burst. Then we had one more fusion rifle added when Vault of Glass was added back in as a legend raid, and that would be the exotic fusion rifle Vex Mythoclast. Unlike other fusion rifles, Vex allows the weapon to be fired in full auto, then once overcharged allows a higher damage output as well as a linear firing mode to deliver a single high charge shot. So with all data gathered, Vex operates at a consistent firing mode, meaning it has a very small capacitor, which seemed to be able to withstand more voltage upon overcharge or when its linear mode is active. In the reality, think about it as overclocking.
Look who decided to finally make a video after all this time. Thank you all so much for watching till the very end. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. On top of that, make sure to follow me on Twitter where I post updates on my new and upcoming projects, to follow me on Twitch where I go live time to time, or join the Discord server. If you feel like supporting me even further, you can use my code XenoGenic on juice.energy for 10% off your next purchase. Links are down below. I also want to give a huge thanks to the people contributing to today's video. A big thank you to Cookie and Jin for their segments in the video, as well as proofreading their parts. I also want to give a huge thank you to Waller for being part of this video and even going out of his way to make this video a reality. Links to their platforms and their codes are on screen. For now, I'm XenoGenic, and I'll see you in the next video.